Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday Roundtable by the Greater Miami Chamber. We're going to wait a few minutes while the room fills. I think we're expecting about 300 folks, so give people a little time to filter in. I think we're already halfway there, so bear with us for just a couple of minutes. We have a great lineup, and we'll get started in just a few. As we continue to fill the room, thank you everybody who has just joined us. We will get started in just a few minutes. We have a great lineup, and please bear with us as we allow people to filter into the room. Thank you. Okay, I think we're going to get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining on our Thursday Roundtable. I'm Alfred Sanchez. I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Miami Chamber. On today's program, we're going to be hearing from some of our top educational leaders who will update us on education, distance learning, and what to expect as we move into this next academic year, one in which I think appears to be continued impact by the COVID-19 crisis. An important part of our roundtables is the Q&A session that we leave towards the end, where you can ask some of your burning questions. So let me go over some of the house rules to ensure we have a really efficient meeting. First of all, I'm going to really ask for your cooperation as we move through the conversation. All the participants will be muted throughout the presentations. The speakers will present their portion, and after we've heard from all the speakers, we will then begin our Q&A session. Now, this is important. To submit a question, go down to the bottom tab, the Q&A tab on your control bar, and raise your hand and write your question and answer. You can also do it in the chat if you want to. Questions are only going to be taken in writing, and after our panelists are done, our administrator, Spencer Pilot, will then start the question and answer period, and he will be reading your questions to the panelists, identifying you, of course. So we're going to try to leave as much time as possible at the end for as many questions as possible. All right, again, thanks for your cooperation as we make this a productive meeting. So we have a lot to go over. We want to leave plenty of time again for your questions at the end. So let me introduce our sponsors. We really want to thank Bank of America, who has been tremendous in stepping up. I think we were expecting Gene Schaefer, who's a market president of Bank of America and also the past chair of the chamber. Gene, are you available?
Jean is not here. However, Vanya Laguerre.
Vanya, how are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. So thank you so much, Alfred. I am the market executive for Bank of America, working very closely with Jean. And unfortunately, his schedule did not permit him to join us. But I am pleased to join you all virtually, representing all of our Bank of America and Merrill colleagues that call Miami home. And I want to thank the Chamber, who really is the voice of the business community here in Miami. Our partnership with the Chamber has been a long-standing and mutually beneficial one because the relationship is truly grounded in our shared commitment to build a better Miami. In these very unprecedented times, it's obviously crucial that local communities come together and bring resources to aid and maintain the well-being of the residents. At Bank of America, we are focusing all of our resources on the number one priority, which is looking after people. Today's roundtable session on education through distance learning is very, very timely given the disruption in the current education delivery, as well as the impact to children and parents. So on behalf of Bank of America, I would like to thank the Chamber and the speakers for facilitating what is going to be an amazing discussion. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Vanya, for the great partnership that Bank of America has given to the Chamber, not only this time, but throughout the ages. Thank you very much. Our next sponsor, Rick Beasley, is the Executive Director of CareerSource South Florida. He's also the chair-elect, first vice chair of the Chamber. And we're really very happy to welcome him and as a sponsor and as a participant. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Alfred. Let me first take my hat off to you and your staff of the work that you all have been doing to ensure that our business community is provided the resources necessary to keep our economy going and growing here in South Florida. I also want to thank the leaders, the education leaders that you have here, Dr. Rosenberg, our superintendent, Ms. Carvalho, fantastic work from over the school system. Also with Dr. Montoya, who I love over at Miami-Dade College, great work there. And then our chancellor at the state. I think the work that you all are doing and how we're responding to the issues that we're facing with this pandemic not only provides challenges, but also opportunities in how we serve our community. We here at CareerSource South Florida, as you know, our role is to provide employment and training solutions for our community and how we fund those and make the investment. So I think the work and what you all hear, the folks will hear today, is some of how our community leaders, our education leaders are addressing the needs for our community, helps us understand what we need to do. I will share with you very quickly, we, for the last several years, have launched a tech hire program. And we've done this in partnership with our school system, Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Dr. Carvalho has allowed us to provide those services in the school system. But because of the challenges, our board today, we had our board meeting, has made a $1 million investment to offer our tech hire program through virtual reality. And so we're going to be able to offer up to 1,000 students to take the tech hire program in Dade and Monroe County. Here's a way of how our board is looking at ways of using the resources that our education partners have put forth, how we're going to help retrain, reskill, retool our community to make it more vibrant so that Miami-Dade County and Monroe County are growing and helping thrive South Florida. So we want to thank you all for participating. Again, Alfred, you and your team, we thank you for your leadership and what you do. You always have our support.
Thank you, Rick, and thanks to CareerSource for the support you always have given us. And we've leaned on it, and I know that the community's leaned on you, and we expect that through these times that will be a heavier load for you as well. But we know you're up to it. Thank you. So as I said, we have a lot of great speakers on board. I want to introduce our first speaker, Superintendent Alberto Carvalho, who's the school superintendent since 2008. The superintendent began his career as a teacher. He taught science and calculus at Miami-Jackson Senior High, where he later became an assistant principal. He's also served as principal and district chief communications officer, where he later then got into the lobbying area. That's when I first met him as a school district lobbyist. And then later as an assistant superintendent before being tapped to lead the 4th largest school district in the country. I think it's safe to say that the superintendent has made a tremendous, tremendous difference in our educational system, making it among the best in the state and the country. And for that, he's been recognized with national and state honors that have been extremely well deserved. Superintendent, let's hear first from you.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present some information pertaining to the closures that we have enacted going back now 3.5 weeks, but also the swift transition to digital online remote learning. I want to thank those present, not only at the Chamber, but also the sponsors for the partnership and the support of our public school system. Let me take a few minutes to go back a little bit in history. You know, a number of districts across the country have reached out to Miami-Dade really to gain information about our instructional continuity planning in light of this crisis, how we built it so quickly, and how we executed it from my vantage point, the vantage point of many, so flawlessly, so seamlessly, not without challenge, but really as a national model to the country. And the truth of the matter is that we did not build it that fast. I remember placing coronavirus in a pandemic, which at that time was an epidemic, a national epidemic in China, on the agenda back in late December and then again early January. And the question on the agenda was a simple one. Are we ready for this crisis to hit our shores? Are we ready to deal with the worst case scenario? And the worst case scenario would be shutting down 520 schools, basically having 355,000 pre-K through 12 students learn in a non-traditional way, simultaneously with the activation of remote teaching for career and technical adult learners who number about 150,000 in individual registrations annually in the school system. What would it take? What would we have to build? Do we have the resources? Second thing we did is we surveyed, recognizing that the most important resource would be one that would enable connectivity from home so that anytime, anywhere learning would be possible. We surveyed every single family in Miami-Dade County Public Schools well in advance of the shutdown. And we recognized, we learned that about 30% of children and families connected to the school system did not have either a device, connectivity, access to internet, Wi-Fi, or both. So we then surveyed our own inventory, and we recognized that, quite frankly, resource in terms of device or connectivity would not be the game changer for us. It would not be a game stopper. Why? We identified over 200,000 devices and about 12,000 hotspots that could be put in the hands of students. The next thing we did was build our ICP, the Instructional Continuity Plan, a means by which we align with pacing guides, curriculum, aligned to standards and grade level, everything that teachers needed to teach, everything students needed to learn, to now a distance learning environment. And then the very last thing prior to the shutdown and the activation of distance learning, we actually trained teachers. We now have done 3.5 full days of training with close to 20,000 teachers in Miami-Dade, ensuring that this transition from bricks and mortar education to digital learning would be as effective as possible. We've encountered some challenges, obviously, along the way, but let me tell you where we are today. Having now launched the Instructional Continuity Plan 2.0 with significant improvements in terms of data access, additional applications, protective features specific to Microsoft Teams and Zoom Enterprise within Microsoft Teams, which does not allow for the penetration of intruders and crash bombing the process. With all the training done, we now have reached a point where we've distributed 105,000 devices, 11,000 hotspots. We have 98% of our kids connected, and our average individual student attendance is around 91.7%. That's about 2 percentage points compared to last year this time during traditional teaching. I think we are beyond our best expectations at this point, particularly compared to other large urban districts and not so urban, rich and poor across the country. Are we satisfied? Absolutely not. The 2% that continue to be disconnected, We are deploying resources to identify them. We know who they are actually, to connect with them. There is something happening as a function of the economy, specific to parents having had their phone lines disconnected or their cell phone numbers disconnected, actually having moved, having been either lost their lease, their apartment, or just moved. But we believe also that there is a certain percentage of students and parents in our community that do not want to be accounted for. These are probably individuals who face a fragile immigration status, and they are reluctant despite our best efforts to connect. Notwithstanding, we have redeployed our workforce, including interventionists, curriculum support personnel, secretaries, bus drivers, and our own police department to knock on doors and make contact, often taking the bag with the device and the connectivity with simple to use instructions to families wherever they are. Shifting very quickly. So the instructional process is ongoing. It is solid. We do hear some complaints, but the overwhelming majority of both teachers, students, and parents are accepting of this modality of learning, considering the crisis we are encountering. It is disruptive, it is less than convenient, but crises by nature are that. The last point I'd like to make, hungry kids can't learn. So before we shut down schools, we surveyed our inventory of food products as well. And we have experience with this since we are the sheltering entity for Miami-Dade County during times of hurricane threat. So we have, as of yesterday, distributed out of our schools, and we're doing food distribution from schools from 4 to 7 p.m. to allow essential personnel who have to work the opportunity to come and retrieve their food. We are providing more than 1 day's worth of meals to every single entity that shows up at our schools to provide for them throughout the week. We're doing 2 distributions per day. And as of yesterday, we have distributed 1,040,000 meals, breakfast and lunch for free out of our schools. And I want to say one thing that may not sit very well with many people. We are the public school system supported with tax dollars. Not a single private sector or charter school entity that I'm aware of is currently distributing food. Those students are picking up food at our schools. We need emergency assistance from the state and the federal government because at this point, the stock is good, the distribution is coming, but we are accruing on a back end a significant loss ratio, a deficit in our food service program because we are feeding the community. In addition to that, through our foundation, we decided to start raising money with the philanthropic giving and the kind giving of companies, entities, and individuals, from the Miami Dolphins to the Related Group to Dan Lewis. We have amassed about $350,000. We're turning around and contracting local restaurants, anything from Jackson's Soul Food to Licking in the north to Versailles and Garcia's on the river, contracting those entities, stimulating the local economy, bringing people back to work as they prepare hot meals for us to distribute to the poorest communities where we know are the greatest concentration of poor kids. We have by now, including today, distributed 10,000 hot meals through these community feeding processes. Very last point. We are already preparing for what I believe will be a twofold conundrum. Number one, when the crisis lifts and we are able to return to traditional schooling, I think parents, as a result of having had a front row seat and witnessing what teaching and learning is all about, many of them will be making decisions and choices. I don't think we'll ever go back to the old normal. A new normal of public education will be established not only in Miami-Dade, but across the country. I believe this will be an evolution of choice for parents. The other point, the greatest concern for me at this point, is that we will see across the country, in the state, and right here in Miami-Dade, the largest, most historic, unprecedented academic regression, a summer slide that the nation's never seen. And that is because of the natural regression that occurs every single summer, compounded by the fourth quarter disruption of traditional teaching and learning, which has impacted most dramatically the most fragile kids. We are developing an academic regression mitigation plan which will see an extension of this school year for targeted students, a summer virtual and possibly face-to-face interaction with the most fragile students, in addition to bringing the most disadvantaged students earlier into the school system to deal upfront with that threat. Thank you very much, Alfred.
Thank you, Superintendent. That's extremely, first of all, hats off to you, the amazing job that you and your staff have been doing through all this, the rapidity with which you sprung into action. And obviously there's a lot of need out there, and being able to close the gap between those who had equipment and connectivity and those who didn't is really tremendous. So thank you for that. I know there's a lot of questions for you later on. We'll come back to you on that. Thank you. Our next speaker is no stranger to all of us, Dr. Rolando Montoya. He's the interim president of Miami-Dade College. Dr. Montoya thought he had retired in 2016 after serving as the provost for Miami-Dade College, but fate had other plans for him. He was called back from retirement this past year to serve as the interim president, succeeding Dr. Eduardo Padron, which speaks of how beloved he is by the administration, the faculty, and the students. During his 3 decades at Miami-Dade College, he also served at the Wilson campus president, Dean of Academic Affairs, but he started his career, as many of our folks on the panel today have, in the classroom as a professor of accounting, finance, and economics and statistics, and later rose to chair of the business college before ascending beyond that. Dr. Montoya, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. Thank you. Dr. Montoya, you're on mute.
Okay. Your people put me on mute. Anyway, let me tell you, this transition from traditional face-to-face teaching to online education has been a challenge, but we are extremely proud of the flexibility and adaptability of our students and our faculty, which in a couple of weeks were able to transform the whole system that we employ at Miami-Dade College to educate our students. We had the advantage of a solid online education program in our virtual college, and we have a learning management system, the Blackboard system, that allows us to create a structure in which faculty can have everything that is necessary to teach a class. You can have the syllabus, you can have the outline, you can have educational materials, videos, chat rooms. You can actually post quizzes and tests, and certain portion of our courses were already being taught in that particular online format. The issue was that not all the faculty were prepared to use such a system and do a rapid conversion of their courses into that platform. Then that's why we needed a couple of weeks to achieve that transformation. And we have to provide crash courses to faculty members and also to some students who weren't prepared to utilize that system. Some faculty members opted for more, I would say, traditional modalities. Instead of adapting the learning management system, they decided to communicate with their students by email, by telephone, sending assignments as PDF or Word attachments, also using Zoom, like we are using today to teach classes, or Skype, or alternative methods. Therefore, we have, that's why we don't call it just online education. We are calling it remote education, because we are using a great variety of methods, depending on the availability and the preparation that the faculty member may have to take charge. We had some challenges. Not every faculty member had equipment at home of the quality that is necessary to provide this type of education, and we needed to provide that. And we also had to buy 3,000 laptops to distribute among the low-income students who didn't have the necessary equipment to go with this process. We also had to enhance our contract with Blackboard to make sure that we would be providing services, technical services 24/7. We had issues also with accrediting agencies and professional regulation boards. And with the support of the Department of Education, we advocated for flexibility, and we were able to get authorization to move to this type of education for all courses. One area that was very difficult is the group of courses for certain careers, for certain programs that don't lend themselves to online or distance education. To give you an example, the clinicals that the medical careers require in hospitals or medical facilities, or the police academy when you have shooting range that are part of the curriculum, or culinary arts in which people really need to use professional kitchens to do the work. Funeral services, when you have to embalm dead bodies as part of the program. And with great creativity and some adjustments, always following the guidance of CDC, we have been able also to take care of that kind of specialized programs. We are very proud of what we have been able to do. And as the superintendent said, this is going to produce a revolutionary change. I think that once that faculty members who had never explored online education before, and now they are doing it, and many students who again didn't opted for that opportunity before, now they might be more inclined or more motivated to go to this type of education. Therefore, I foresee growth in online education, which brings some opportunities, because when you are teaching online, you can actually have a greater market scope. For example, Latin America is a very good potential market for Miami. There is very strong connection. And I think that this increase in online distance education may attract people out of the city, out of the county, out of the state, and even international students to opt for this kind of opportunities. We are preparing for the summer term that is going to start on Monday, June 1st, and for the fall term that is going to start on Monday, August 31st. We're still hopeful that maybe by June or by August, we would be able to normalize the situation, if not totally, at least partially. But since we had this experience, we are ready to mobilize our faculty again to whatever modality is necessary depending on the circumstances. We will be listening to the guidance of CDC and of course the Florida Department of Education, the local mayors to determine when it's time for us to come back. More importantly, the college is autonomous and is governed by its own district board of trustees. They will have the final word in terms of when we are ready to go back to our campuses. Our employees, most of them are working remotely. I am really impressed by how efficient the operations have continued being. It has been hard to reach this point, but the fact is that we are operating pretty smoothly at this time. We are very grateful of the state government, because the guidance that they provided and all the flexibility that they provided, they extended deadlines for our grants. They extended the deadlines for reports that we have to submit. They advocated for us before professional boards and accrediting agencies. And we are also very grateful of the federal government that is sending massive support, direct support to higher education institutions. With the funds that we will be receiving soon from the federal government, we are planning to prepare packets, attractive packets of coverage of tuition and fees, and even cash stipends to our students. And we are complementing the federal money with additional resources that will be provided by the Miami-Dade College Foundation and also by the Mitchell-Wolfson Senior Foundation. And we believe that that will help our students, will help the community, and we will protect the level of enrollment that we want to have at Miami-Dade College during summer and fall. I think that summarizes our current status.
Thank you, Dr. Montoya. Truly amazing. 3,000 laptops given out to students. It goes to show, you know, how quickly you all have had to pivot and really think out of the box. So appreciate that. Next, we have Chancellor Jacob Oliva, who is the Division of Public Schools, Florida Department of Education Chancellor. Oliva has had a long career which has spanned almost the entire gamut of education, beginning as a special education teacher, and then a principal, assistant superintendent of Flagler County Public Schools. He currently, there we go. He currently is the Division of Public Schools Chancellor, and he oversees the operations K through 12, which ranges everything from standards and instructions to family and community engagement. Chancellor Oliva, we welcome you. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Alfred, and thank you to the Chamber for hosting this forum and allowing us to be a part of the dialogue and discussion here today. A lot of people on here may not know, while I am currently in Tallahassee working now, and I'm not in South Florida, I am a product of South Florida. I grew up down in Miami. I'm a product of Dade County Public Schools. So while I may not full-time reside there, I consider Miami my home. And it always has a special place in my heart. Dr. Montoya, I actually did a couple semesters at Miami-Dade College a long, long time ago. So I know the community well, and I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you. So Superintendent Carvalho did a fantastic job talking about some of the challenges that they face with supporting students in distance learning right there in Miami-Dade County. And a lot of the challenges and obstacles and hurdles that they've had to overcome, we're seeing that consistently across our landscape here in Florida as well. And I can tell you early on in these conversations, when statewide leadership was looking at the impacts of COVID-19 and talking about the closures of schools and what that may look like, early on one of our superintendent conference calls with Commissioner Corcoran, we were dialoguing with superintendents across the state about what would this happen, what would this look like if we did have to close schools. Superintendent Carvalho very generously was one of the first people that stepped up and said, Jacob, Miami-Dade's working on an instructional continuity plan. We think there's a lot of value there. We think this is something we can scale across the state. It's important that all of our students are in a safe learning environment and have access to high quality curriculum. And this is a framework that I think we can build out. And I can tell you, I know Superintendent Carvalho is probably humble in this regard, but his willingness to just be a role model and leader for everyone in the state is something that we hold in high regard. And being able to share that plan that we have seen, I've seen firsthand how that framework has been duplicated and implemented across the state, is why Florida is continuing to lead all other states across the nation with distance learning and making sure that we're providing high quality opportunities for our students. So I can tell you from day one, when we've been looking at the impact of COVID-19 and how this is going to impact our young learners and our scholars and our students, not even just in the K-12 spectrum, but we have early learning providers in our post-secondary students as well, and our current technical education programs and our state college system and beyond. We knew that number one, we had to make sure that everybody was safe and that their basic needs were able to be met. And school districts immediately started implementing feeding programs, cleaning campuses, looking at distance learning, and on top of making sure everybody was in a safe, positive learning environment, that they had access to high quality curriculum. I can tell you about 3 weeks into implementing distance learning, and we've heard from a lot of teachers, a lot of districts, a lot of parents across the state that they're figuring it out much better. And I can tell you week 3 is probably going a whole lot better and more seamless than what it was during week 1. And teachers are making those quality adjustments to their curriculum and supporting the families with the resources that they have the best that they can. And I can tell you, we kind of try to follow a very simple motto here at the state. And the secret to some of our formulas is we know that number one, without a doubt, the key to students being successful in their academic pathways is getting high quality teachers in front of them. And our superintendents and our school districts do a fantastic job supporting the high quality talent that we have across our Florida landscape and getting the best leaders that we can to lead our school districts and our schools. And every time that we've had a challenge or a crisis that we face in the state, it is evident, it is clearly evident that Florida has the best leaders and the best teachers that we could possibly ask to put in front of our students, because there is not one challenge or obstacle that they cannot overcome or one hurdle that they will not climb to make sure that we provide the best opportunities for our students. So I can tell you early on in these dialogues, Miami-Dade County and Superintendent Carvalho and his team has been open and accessible, and they are role models for the 66 other districts and throughout the state. And we are very grateful for his leadership and his willingness to participate in learning for everyone. The department very early on, once we started moving into implementing distance learning plans, established some very important resources that we want to make sure that your listening community is aware of. And you can find those at www.fldoe.com, www.fldoe.com, where we have provided all the technical assistance, all the memos, all the things that we need, the tools that we need to give the school districts and schools to support distance learning. But also we've aggregated resource links and materials and opportunities for parents and students to be supportive in distance learning. And we've heard from a lot of families that their needs are wide and they vary, and we're doing our best to help mitigate those and provide those bridges to close those gaps as much as we can. But I can tell you the business community, especially our educational business community, has really come out in full support of our schools and our children. And on those resources, there are links to several different online learning opportunities, different curriculums that historically parents, students, teachers may have had to pay for, where they have opened up access and are providing those resources for free, because the business community knows how important it is to invest in learning and support education. And we are very grateful. And if you have a business that is interested in being supportive of some of our educational initiatives, and your resources you want to make available to the students throughout the state of Florida, and you're not listed on that on our website, please just send me an email. We'd be happy to share that with you so that you can follow up. And we want to make sure that we can promote and provide access for our students there as well. We're very grateful throughout this pandemic and implementation of distance learning for Governor DeSantis and for Commissioner Corcoran to set the vision and set the tone that they are going to do whatever is within their power to make sure that school districts, principals, and teachers can make decisions that are in the best interest of students. So we are very grateful that we've received some executive orders and some emergency orders that have allowed districts the flexibility to move dollars around to support distance learning, to alleviate some of the concerns around standardized testings and the gradings of schools, and to provide opportunities to help support the mitigation of summer learning loss that Superintendent Carvalho was talking about. That flexibility is really part of the key to Florida's success as we've been moving forward, and why we are still truly leading the nation with distance learning. Commissioner Corcoran very early on set the tone and the vision of what it means to move through how we're going to support students. And he said, we're going to do this with compassion and grace. We don't want this pandemic or opportunities that students may not be afforded to hurt their future careers, to hurt their future goals and their future paths. And we have taken that at heart, and every decision that we have made here at the state in supporting students starts with that vision. So moving forward, we've been able to secure some executive orders and emergency orders that we're able to implement to support students. And we providing webinars and topical conferences directly to our families, teachers, students, school leaders, and able to support and move that forward. But I can tell you, when we start asking ourselves questions is, what does this look like in the future? I think Superintendent Carvalho is extremely right in his point in looking at how do we mitigate students that are already below performance academically that may be compounded with summer loss. We call it the summer slide, on top of not being able to be afforded direct instruction that they may need in order for them to be able to catch up and maintain the academic performance that we want to see. So right now, if we were looking at those different buckets, we are doing whatever we can to make sure we can maintain a high quality learning environment and close out this school year with compassion and grace for our students to set them up for success. Start looking at what is summer remediation, summer boot camps, summer learning opportunities look like, and then look at how are we planning to bring students back and catch them up and make sure that they're getting the right interventions and support they need. Or there's students that may need to be accelerated on the other end of the spectrum. We want to make sure that they're getting pushed academically and meeting those challenges, and those pathways aren't closed and they have every opportunity to learn and be successful. There's a lot of moving parts throughout Florida. Every community is rallying around their schools and supporting their students. We are so grateful for the way people have opened up their resources and have been readily available to make sure that we can provide that high quality learning environment. And at the state, we continue to work in contact with each district to make sure that they have the resources that they can be able to be put in place to support them. And we're going to continue to do so. And I look forward to listening about what's happening from the other panelists here on today's conversation and engaging in a question and answer dialogue. So thank you. Thank you again for allowing me to be on the webinar today.
Thank you, Chancellor. Extremely enlightening to see, to sort of zoom out and see what's going on in the state. And it's heartening to know that, although not surprising to know that our superintendent has been taking a lead role in the state, and we thank him for that too. So next on our agenda is a good friend. Dr. Rosenberg serves as the 5th president of FIU since being appointed in 2009. He's a political scientist specializing in Latin America. And I think it really is important to note he's the first president to have come up from the faculty ranks. Under his leadership, FIU has grown tremendously. Their enrollment is 56,000 students, probably more by now. And he's improved the university's academic standing and by expanding and developing FIU into one of the top tier of the Carnegie Foundation research universities. It is with great pleasure that I introduce the very first chairman that I served under at the Greater Miami Chamber, Dr. Mark Rosenberg.
Thanks, Alfred. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much. First of all, thanks to Bank of America, thanks to CareerSource, thanks to the Chamber. There is a lot that we got to do as a community, and it's incredible platforms like the Chamber offers that makes the Chamber relevant and an important vehicle for us. There are two dilemmas that we are particularly concerned about at FIU. First of all is how to foster a new normal in which public health can be assured. And second, of how to restore Florida's economy so that our workforce can return to full employment in a context of ascending prosperity. And so those two challenges, I think, confront all of us really in the education community, but we're certainly spending a lot of time on those. I want to offer up 3 lessons and then go into some of the details. I have a slide that summarizes them very nicely. But I think one of what we found already is that what you thought yesterday you wouldn't do today, you're probably going to be doing. And that we got to do a much better job of listening, particularly to people around us who may have alternative approaches. And the third lesson that we see is that we've got to be creative and flexible. Also, from the viewpoint of what we've done in the Chamber over the years and how we think in the community, I feel that while we're all pointing and looking to what I call day 2, when we get into that new normal that the superintendent talked about, that we can't get into day 2 if our friends and neighbors in Latin America can't get out of day 1, which gives us an added challenge given that our geography is our destiny. Closer to home, FIU, probably the most important thing that you need to know is that our graduation is going to be on May the 8th. We intend to graduate our students on May the 8th in what will be a virtual graduation. Our goal is that no student who intended to graduate will not be able to graduate because of this dilemma. And a lot of initiatives are focused around the simple concept of ensuring student success, whatever the challenge. Beginning in early March, we began the process of conversion of courses to remote. We converted 5,000 courses to remote learning. We already had about 1,600 courses that were offered fully online. And I do want to point out that remote doesn't necessarily mean fully online. And so as the superintendent and President Montoya have pointed out, we've been able to take advantage of technology platforms to make sure that our students could get full access to the teaching and learning that they deserve and that they paid for. We also have gotten involved directly in the community. We've printed over 2,000 shields for health workers and first responders. We opened up a testing center in conjunction with the youth fair, and we've provided 2,100 tests to members of the community concerned about their condition. We supplied 28 ventilators to the state EOC to use. Our South Beach Wine and Food Festival, in conjunction with the Chaplain School of Hospitality and Tourism Management, has raised over $1,300,000. We've received 557 applications from independently owned restaurants and bars in South Florida that are impacted to support those restaurant staffs who otherwise do not have income. By the way, a third of those 550 happen to be FIU alumni-owned restaurants and establishments. Our Small Business Development Center, as Rick knows, has been very, very busy. 103 loans totaling $4.4 million in Miami-Dade and Monroe County. And our FIU Strong program has raised over $1 million for emergency support for about 239 students who have applied. There have actually been closer to 1,200 applications from our hardworking students because of the loss of employment, either to them or to their families, or the otherwise hardship that has been brought about as a consequence of the pandemic. We are determined as an institution of higher education to use hope to push fear aside. We are determined that our summer offerings will be robust and full to meet expanding community needs. We do expect that other things being equal, there will be a great demand for our students for courses. Last year we had 41,000 students on campus, offered 4,000 courses, and we expect that number actually probably to increase given the difficulties out there with employment and the opportunities to move further ahead. As it relates to the new normal that we're going into and what I call day 2, I just want to put 2 pointers out there. I think that what we'll see is a movement from being student-centered to learner-centered, particularly with the intensity of the unemployment that individuals in our community are going to need to get refresher courses. They're going to need to get new competencies. And so you'll see us becoming much more learner-centered. We've already started that with our Up Labs for people who find themselves unemployed and need a reskilling. We have already started that with the generous support of some community, with the community bank and others. I also see a movement towards micro-credentialing, and that micro-credentialing will be ways in which we can provide alternative certifications and competencies for just-in-time learning to individuals out there who need that in order to be competitive in what will be an expanded gig economy. So I'm happy to answer questions and deal with any other issues during the question and answer. I want to thank the Chamber for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Rosenberg. Very enlightening. I love the idea of moving from student-centered to learner-centered. I think that's going to be a big area for all of us to deal with. Before we get to questions, I know that my friend Virginia Jacko, who's the president of Miami Lighthouse for the Blind, is on with us, and I'm going to break a little bit from our traditional model. And Spencer, if you wouldn't mind opening her mic, I just want to let you know that Virginia has been involved with distance learning for a long time. Actually, since its infancy, really. She really, from her position and working with the visually impaired, has really brought that online learning in a new way for folks who are dealing with limitations in physical ability, and has brought that to the Miami Lighthouse for the Blind. You know, she describes the distance learning as, you know how we have put ramps onto our schools to allow accessibility to folks who have disabilities, that distance learning is the new ramp to learning accessibility to all students, irrespective of their abilities. And Virginia, are you with us? Spencer, are we able to find Virginia?
One moment.
Okay. I think it's important. I'd love for all of you to talk a little bit about, after we hear from Virginia, a little bit about you know, how has this experience allowed us to reach out or been.
Thank you, Alfred.
Go ahead, Virginia.
Thank you for this opportunity. And I do want to do a shout out for the superintendent and Miami-Dade County Public Schools, because from the perspective of visually impaired students in our early learning center and our kindergarten, and soon to be our first grade, they have worked extremely hard to ensure that everything that they are doing in terms of distance learning for visually impaired students, they are making distance learning accessible. And I know that they are leading the nation. We are a great collaborator. Miami Lighthouse got early into distance learning when I was at Purdue University, back when Florida State, Penn State distance learning programs were being sued. I was invited by the Chronicle of Higher Education to write an article. Today, I do believe that it's important, especially for universities, to emphasize to their teaching faculty, yes, Blackboard, yes, Canvas are accessible platforms. But in the haste, and I know my husband is still a civil engineering professor at Purdue, my question to him was, when you uploaded your lessons, Bob, did you just take your PowerPoint slide and upload that picture of that civil engineering bridge? Or did you put alternative text with that bridge? And so if the faculty, the instructors go directly to their PowerPoint, their Microsoft product, it will be accessible. But when they take an image and load that up, it is no different than a visually impaired student touching a piece of glass. It's just a picture. And so I do know that Nova Southeastern has a mandatory distance learning training for all faculty. It is important. In Miami Lighthouse, we have had many clients, education, retail, hospitals, where we have provided consulting services to ensure that either distance learning or websites are accessible. And as community leaders celebrating our 90th anniversary, I welcome our computer scientists and our IT staff, who are all blind just like I am, yet I'm a great computer user. we will put on any training sessions for any institution of education as part of our contribution to this learning at home. And again, one more time, I do applaud the superintendent because I am not aware of a single visually impaired student that is having trouble accessing their learning at home through distance learning. Thank you, Superintendent.
If I may
Thank
just,
you.
respond
ahead.
quickly.
Go ahead, please, Sue.
Thank you, Virginia. You are an indispensable asset to this community, a terrific partner. And, you know, who would we be if we left any child behind on the basis of their disability? So all of our content is adaptive, it's personalized, it's ADA compliant, and accommodations are made in accordance with the IEP. Sometimes it is difficult, it is challenging, but we try to meet every single child exactly where they are. That's what we do every single day. And the fact that we're doing it now remotely does not waive in any way, shape, or form the moral and legal duty upon us to meet those children, regardless of the challenges, difficulties, or disabilities they may have.
Thank you, Superintendent. I don't know if anybody else wants to address the visually impaired question. Okay. So before we begin the questions, and Spencer, we're about to get started on that. Let me just ask a couple of follow-ups on the presentations we had, because you know, I guess one of the things that we're struggling to understand is what is the enrollment going to be, right? I mean, people are going to be out of work, they're not going to have money. Does that mean that they're not going to go out of state, especially if we're still social distancing because they're in, you know, whatever Georgia school or what have you, and they don't want to pay out-of-state tuition if they're only going to be socially isolated. So that might mean greater enrollment, but it also means more people out of work. We've got historic, unseen unemployment numbers, people who are already struggling paycheck to paycheck, and we're talking about months now. So if we do see all of these folks who are around and wanting to get a further education, what resources are we allowed? What resources do we have to allow them to enter into the educational process?
I will be glad to answer that question. We have developed during this period a variety of short-term programs in areas that are in high demand, especially in information technology, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, etc. And not only we have developed that short curriculum that could be satisfied in some instances in a few weeks or in a few months, but we are planning to provide this for free to the community using some of the resources that we have been getting from foundations and from the federal government. In addition, for the more traditional programs, our different college credit certificates, associate in science, associate in arts, and even the baccalaureates that we have, we are preparing packets that would include coverage of tuition and fees, and also catch stipends to help the students. We are in the final stages of developing that program, but we want to make sure that we give priority to the lower income students first. Those are the ones receiving the Pell Grant. And then on second place, we have the ones who are some sort of middle income and they only receive partial Pell. But we understand also that individuals who were not eligible for federal financial aid a couple of months ago, now they have lost their jobs, or the parents have lost the jobs, or they were entrepreneurs and the businesses are closed or having losses. We are also preparing packets for that particular group. Then we are optimistic that we will be able to protect most of our enrollment for both summer and fall with these incentives that we will be providing and will be heavily announced. But we also believe that we are going to offer certificates, credit and non-credit, to help the unemployed population, the displaced workers, to be able to get training in relatively short period of time to be able to enter the workforce and contribute to the economy.
Thank you. Thank you. Mark, did you want to take a stab at that? Or?
First is we have like Miami-Dade, a significant percentage of our students are on Pell Grants. And we developed a program that any student who has zero family contribution will find a way to cover their tuition so that there's no student, because of financial difficulties, as long as they go through FAFSA, who should not be able to get an education at FIU. We'll make up the difference. And we've been doing that now for a couple of years. But now more than ever, that'll become important. Second of all, our emergency loans through our FIU Strong program. Obviously, the demand will outstrip the supply, but we're also very grateful to the federal government for coming in and helping our students. And we're going to have an early disbursement like Miami-Dade to help on an emergency basis. In the nearer term, we think it's very important that students who are already enrolled at FIU consider staying. If they're going to graduate, they consider staying and taking additional education, perhaps getting a master's degree. And we're also now beginning to offer our micro-credentials, not just to our currently enrolled students, but in the community that are basically just-in-time learning to improve skill sets and improve employability. Beyond that, we see probably our Up Labs program, which has been very successful to this point, 3 cohorts. We see that as expanding. But I want to go back to the issue. Those families out there that now find a no income, we have programs, particularly if they're willing to start with FAFSA, that can enable their sons and daughters to come to the university without having to pay tuition at all. We find ways to cover that. So that's very important.
Thank you. And maybe the both of you can somehow put any links to information from each of your institutions on the chat. That'd be great.
Well, let me add that Mark and I have been talking about this, and our staff have also been coordinating in terms that, at least in substance, both the programs of FIU and Miami-Dade College will be similar. And definitely we are going to have a web page in which all the opportunities will be listed, and an application form will be available. And again, we will be doing advertising through social media and through traditional methods, so that, and of course, internal advertising to our current students, so that everybody knows about the opportunities that we will be offering for summer and fall.
Hey, Alfred.
Yeah.
This is
Good, Rick.
One of the things that CareerSource is doing, again, the college, as well as FIU, are one of our training partners, as well as the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. We too are, we have the resources. We've asked and requested additional resources from Tallahassee through the U.S. Department of Labor, additional resources to train those workers who have been displaced. And so we'll work with our training partners to be able to offer those settings. So if they're not qualifying, or we're leverage resources so that they can qualify for our programs, so we can pay for them to attend one of our training partners here. In addition, we will be launching support service payments to individuals who qualify for our program, where we can assist with their housing, with their transportation, with childcare. We know the folks in this community have been impacted, have not been able to receive their unemployment benefits because of hang-ups with the system. We as a workforce board are putting resources there so we could assist our community for those who qualify with support services. Again, housing, transportation, utilities, those types of things. But we'll work with FIU, we'll work with Miami-Dade College, we'll work with Miami-Dade County Public Schools, as well as some of our private sector training vendors. A lot of them have moved their programs online. And so we're going to shift our resources where we can become a resource to them, be able to get their education paid for, so they can get reskilled, retooled, and be able to obtain jobs, because employers are hiring. So I wanted to put that on the record.
And I think that we've got a question on the chat that says, how can a business become involved if they want to be one of the businesses for you send folks? Maybe you can. Spencer, you've got, I know we've got a lot of questions in queue here. Why don't you start there, Spence?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Spencer Pylant. I'm the Chamber's Vice President of Government Affairs. Prior to this role, I served at a school district in Pasco County as their communications and government relations liaison as well. So I have some experience with public education. Our first question, we've been getting a lot of questions on this topic. I'm going to open it up to each of our panelists for their level of public education, and then ask the Chancellor to speak on more of a statewide perspective. How are you handling graduation?
I will be glad to start. We were planning our beautiful graduation ceremonies for May 2nd, but given the circumstances, we had to postpone them. Then they are going to take place on December 12th. That's when we will have the big celebrations with the keynote speakers of highest quality. Now, on the interim, everybody who is fulfilling the academic requirements for any certificate, associate degree, or baccalaureate will be automatically graduated at the college by the registrar's office. And the certificate or degree will be posted on the transcript, and they are going to receive the diploma by mail. That's basically what we are doing.
For the school board, we actually are having very productive conversations. And by the way, I've been typing answers to the questions posed on chat. I think I answered most of them, so I hope to not be repetitive. But for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and if graduations to be held at about 50 high schools, we are currently in very productive conversations with our principals, activities directors, whose responsibility is really to organize the graduation, and senior high school senior leaders from every high school in Miami-Dade to receive their input on how best to dignify and honor this quite frankly, very important moment in their lives. Two camps have emerged. One would prefer to have graduations delayed until sometime in the summer, when they could be resumed in a traditional way with all the pomp and circumstance. There's another group of students who really want a virtual graduation that is entertaining, 21st century. So we continue to listen. I'm actually going to be in a town hall meeting with high school students tomorrow, utilizing Zoom. And then by next week, we hope to announce a final decision on graduations for Miami-Dade County Public Schools.
Chancellor, are you seeing similar camps develop across the state with other school districts?
Sure. Thank you, Spencer. And thank you again for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. So one of the things I think is a good point to point out is that we had seniors that were on track to graduate in the spring of 2020. And some of these students may not have been actually seniors, because we have juniors that are in acceleration programs. We have students that are graduating with dual enrollment opportunities, earning international baccalaureate diplomas. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure is, with this move to distance learning, there were a lot of statewide organizations that offer standardized assessments that are associated with several of the different programs that students need to finish, or benchmarks that they need to achieve to be able to graduate. And we wanted to make sure when it came to graduating students that we were expecting to graduate in the spring of 20, that had their credit requirements, that had their GPA requirements, but may have been missing a few exams, that we wanted to hold them harmless. So at the state level, thankful to Commissioner Corcoran and Governor DeSantis to give us that authority, we were able to make sure that no student that we expect to graduate would be held back and not be able to move forward with their post-secondary plans or their journeys and paths that they were about to enter. We've got a lot of folks that are signed up and enlisted in the military, and we want to make sure that we continue to work with school districts, that we don't end up with some unintended consequences if we delay graduation for those students. We want to make sure that we can support them graduating on time because they have enlistment dates, and we want to make sure that they have that opportunity to miss that. But as far as that kind of rite of passage of a graduation ceremony or providing closure for those students, a lot of districts are having very similar conversations, such as Miami-Dade. We've heard of some districts that are saying if they're not able to open and provide a graduation experience in a safe environment where they may have done in traditional senses. Some schools typically may have had the school football stadium, let's say, for example, be the place where they would have a high school graduation. If the CDC guidelines don't allow that and that's not a safe environment, they are looking at maybe doing it virtually. I've heard from some school districts say, hey, we're going to see if maybe we can do it in July, even as late as August. We want to provide this experience. I even talked to one school district that was looking at maybe doing a drive-in virtual graduation where everybody could stay in their car and then they could drive their car up to the stage and get out and take a picture with their principal and get a picture and get back in their car and keep moving. So what we're finding is people are being creative. They recognize the significance and importance of formal graduation, and they want to make sure their students have that opportunity.
And Alfred, let me take a brief moment to thank my good friend Jacob Oliva and the Commissioner of Education, Corcoran, for the early decision to waive all testing requirements statewide that would be part of the standard accountability system for Florida. That would require, for example, an assessment for the promotion of a third grader into fourth grade, or graduation requirements that would be attached, for example, to a 10th grade assessment or a concordant score in the SAT or ACT. Lifting those requirements, quite frankly, brought a great deal of stability to the education community. With that said, I take this opportunity to stress to parents of senior high school students, it's not a free ride. You need still to meet your GPA requirement and complete your course requirement to graduate. But I think it was an early decision by the Department of Education to allay some concerns that parents, teachers, and students would be feeling at this point.
So, Superintendent, if I heard you correctly, are the SATs and ACTs being waived off now?
No, what I said is, the state of Florida under statute allows for students who do not pass a state accountability exam, which is usually taken in 10th grade, right, to then avail themselves of a concordant score on the ACT or SAT to graduate. No longer the need for that this year. As you probably know, SAT and ACT, they have informed communities across the country that they have suspended a number of their regular test administrations, and they will be publishing additional ones. The same is true for Cambridge ACE testing, as well as International Baccalaureate. So the focus of high school students now is do well in your courses, complete your course, make sure your GPA is adequate to graduate on time this year.
Well, so given that, and Spencer, I'll get you back into questions, but I just want to, because I think this is extremely critical. So how are we measuring? Do we know yet? I mean, it's early. How are we measuring student academic success at this point? And I want to start with you, Superintendent. What the presidents have to say as well.
Sure. So I appreciate that question because, as I said, there's no free ride for anybody. As part of our Instructional Continuity Plan 2.0, we were able to negotiate with the teachers union up front accountability on both ends, student accountability as far as attendance and academic performance, but also accountability for our workforce. We are paying everybody, even part-time hourly people, but we have refocused their duties and responsibilities into something that can be observed, supervised, and managed during the duration of this crisis. So for students, for example, our applications, and Jacob is quite familiar with this, under our ICP, our applications are interactive, aligned to standards and grade level, supervised by teachers, and they produce periodic academic performance data. So for example, every time a student logs on to something that this community is well sensitized to, iReady, it is producing data that teachers use. Secondly, as part of our negotiated agreement with the union, it is established and parents are now aware that for every grade level and every discipline, every subject, students are being graded on the work they do online as supervised, monitored, and administered or required by their teachers. What has been lifted has been statewide examinations. What has not been lifted is individual student accountability for their own progress and demonstration of proficiency or growth over time under the tutelage of an individual teacher. So the grades at the end of the year and decisions about promotion or retention hinge on teacher judgment, consultation with principal, but also the voice of parents. And this was critical, and it was, and quite frankly, provided as a matter of guidance by the State Department of Education. I agree with it, that for third graders, in the absence of a state assessment, this ought to be a teacher decision in consultation with the principal, but the parent ought to also have a voice regarding the promotion or retention of that student.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Montoya? You're on mute, sir.
Yes, I wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to inform the superintendent that the incentive packets that we are preparing, covering tuition and fees and also cash stipends, will also be made available to the new class who are graduating now this spring. Then if you have students who may want to start early during the summer, we will make available that support. And of course, for those who might still want their summer off and start in the fall, we will also make that available. We will be communicating with your principals and your CAP advisors with all the details so that your graduating class can apply for these benefits.
Thank you very much. Considering the crisis, I would urge Dr. Rosenberg, Dr. Montoya to suspend any costs associated with dual enrollment. We're all in this together.
Well, we're very
we will
proud of our
discuss.
dual enrollment. Both of us are very proud of our dual enrollment arrangements. That's for sure. And that's because you set a high goal, Superintendent, and I think we exceeded it. So, but thank you.
Here is the winner.
I can only say that revenues are declining and expenses have continued or have increased. Therefore, we need to be very careful with the revenue that we generate at the college, especially to provide those incentives.
That's why I was attempting to offset my own liability. But it's good that in times of crisis we can laugh. I mean, the alternative is not acceptable, right?
Right, it's true. It's true.
Spencer, you want to go to the next question?
Yes, Superintendent, regarding student individual accountability, can you speak to students who are doing advanced placement or interbaccalaureate IB classes? How is that going to change for them once they have their assessments that are normally scheduled to come up at the end of the school year?
Right, so thank you for the question. For students who are in AP classes, the College Board actually opened an option for online assessment, and that is a parental and student choice. Otherwise, the grade is the grade assigned by the teacher, and it would hinge on a individual teacher decision, such as an end of course final exam. As far as IB, Cambridge, or ACE, announcements have been made that in fact those assessments have been canceled at this point. So again, a completion of the coursework as evaluated and judged, academically judged by the teacher, would be the only significant input that would determine a student's completion of the program.
Thank you, Superintendent. This next question comes from Jacqueline, and I believe that just about all the panelists can answer it. What successes are you seeing with distance learning that you intend to implement once coronavirus has passed us and we're returning to our new normal? What are some of the programming options or technologies that you're going to integrate within your learning that your students are having?
Why don't we start with Dr. Rosenberg first on that one?
Well, we've had an aggressive approach to e-learning. We have 50 undergraduate degrees fully online and 50 graduate degrees fully online. And so we're going to do an assessment at the end of the semester to understand what we've learned, not just from the fully online experience, but the remote experience. I think there's actually more learning to gain from the remote experience. It's the first time that at scale we've taught remotely. And I happen even though I'm worried about the learning gains and how we measure those in remote learning, I like the access feature. Let's remember the following, that not all of our students, as the superintendent pointed out, and as Rolando pointed out, not all of our students have working devices. Not all of our students live in places where there's bandwidth, and not all of our students have learning environments in their homes that foster thoughtful online or remote or fully online work. And so there's a lot of different peaks and valleys that we have to look at in order to continue to get it right. I know that there's a lot of important lessons, particularly from remote. I know that there's a lot of important lessons from fully online, because you have instances where our learners have also themselves had children that they've had to keep an eye on while they're trying to do their learning. So it's been a very difficult environment for our students to adapt. And I have a great deal of admiration for how they've adapted and how determined they've been in the context of this hardship to get their learning in.
Thank you. Superintendent, what about you? That's got to be a big question.
Yeah, so as I said early on, I don't expect once this crisis is lifted and the safe at home order is relaxed, that we will go back to traditional education as we know it. That old normal will not be regained. And I think that what we will see will be yet again an additional dimension of parental choice that will include something that already exists. I just think we will see it grow, which is either a full distance learning option, whether it's Florida virtual, Miami-Dade's online school, or a combination of private sector provided options, or a blended learning environment where part of the time it involves personal face-to-face interaction, but part of the time it is digital content that's personalized and adaptive driven. And we have that, whether it is through the iPrep franchise, our own online schooling approach, online education that's provided through Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I think more and more parents will consider at least having some courses beyond what the state mandates for Florida virtual, taking advantage of that. So I think that the parents' exposure, so your initial question was, what are some of the benefits? In the midst of this very disruptive and inconvenient transition, I think parents, number one, from the vantage point of a public school educator, have learned how tough, how difficult it really is, because they have had to be directly involved in managing, to a certain extent, the students' engagement with the applications and the resources. But they've learned in the process as well. As I said, the curtain is opened, and now all they have to do to understand better what happens in terms of the interaction, the dynamic interaction between teacher and student, is look at the computer and see what their kids are doing and observe the Zoom sessions or the Microsoft Teams sessions. I think that, quite frankly, is good for parents, it's good for education, it's good for students. And I think that will be a benefit moving forward. There's a new level of understanding of how tough teaching can be, but also how important parental guidance in a process can become. And lastly, as I said, I think an opportunity for school systems, now that we know that we have the capacity to connect all students, to provide real-time, personalized remediation and acceleration that's 24/7, anytime, anywhere, and meets children where they are. That's a game changer, not only Miami-Dade across the state, but across the country.
Thank you. Dr. Montoya, you wanted to?
Yes, I would like to say that one of the advantages of what we are living right now is that all the faculty, especially those who might have had concerns about going on distance education modalities or online modalities, now are losing part of whatever phobia they might have had for that methodology. Out of necessity, they had to learn how to operate these kind of systems. By the way, the systems are functioning very well. I think that the question from the audience was what might be working or not from a technological perspective. I can tell that our learning management system is working very well. And in terms of accountability, our proctored exams are also working very well. Students are also getting a taste of the modality. I think that this is going to produce a schedule that has greater number of online offerings in the future, and also what we call hybrid offerings. Students still like to be together. They like to participate in sports, in student life activities, and maybe portions of the course could be done online, and portions of the course can be done face to face, especially when there are lab or clinicals involved. But definitely, this is a revolution, and we will see the change. And I think that technology has not failed us. I think that one of the reasons why we were able to adapt so quickly to what we are doing is because the technology is of high quality. The providers of this type of instruments in the United States have done basically a good job.
Thank you. Superintendent, I'm not sure if you're able to hear this, but I see on the chat room that our friend David Ramos, who heads up Hotwire here in South Florida, has said that they have some help that they may be able to provide for connectivity. So I just wanted to pass that along.
Yeah, actually, I believe I responded to him directly. Look, I think we've exceeded our expectations in terms of connectivity, but it continues to be a community challenge, not as much a school system challenge, which is impacting to a certain extent attendance. And I want to just reiterate a little bit of what I said earlier. This week, we've seen an average daily attendance of about 91.3% Monday, 91% Tuesday, and then 91.5% Wednesday. At this point, only 6 traditional schools have an attendance that is lower than 75%, and that's a concern for us. Schools that had 80% or lower average daily attendance make up about 3.8% of the entire student population. So one of the biggest issues is not necessarily students having connectivity, because attendance is actually, and this may be counterintuitive, attendance is trailing connectivity. As of today, 99% of our students, and we know this because we registered their activity, are connected, but some are not attending, meaning they are not logging on at least by 9 p.m., which is the cutoff. And this is pretty much consistent with the practice in Broward County, for example. And we know what the reasons are. So let me speak specifically to Mr. Ramos' question. We need assistance. The biggest assistance we need is the identification. We're working with county and municipal entities in identifying the digital deserts in our community, meaning they're not covered by powerful Wi-Fi umbrella connectivity. Because the devices we provide and the hotspots only work to a certain extent, to the extent that they connect with something above them, okay? The hotspots are a mitigation strategy, but sometimes it is best to have that Wi-Fi connectivity. So we'd love to get that assistance. Secondly, for the fragile student populations, we know who they are. Students with unstable housing, 10,000 homeless kids, migrant students, students whose immigration status is fragile. We have documented we're having a difficult time connecting with some of these students, and I think it is deliberate on the part of families who are fearful of establishing contact. And the phones have been disconnected. Home address has changed, so we are deploying our staffs, knocking on doors, police officers, interventionist people we have redeployed. So this is work in progress, but any assistance would be most welcome.
Thank you for that. Well, we're almost out of time, and want to be respectful of everybody's time here. Dr. Rosenberg, thank you very much. Dr. Montoya, Superintendent Carvalho, Chancellor Oliva, thank you so much for being a part of this. And I want to introduce, by the way, I also see that Dr. Lenore Radicio, Provost at MDC, is also with us. Welcome for that. I want to introduce James Knapp, who is our chair of the Education and Workforce Committee, to say a few parting words. James?
Thank you so much, Alfred. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much to everybody, all the panelists, on behalf of the Chamber and really, you know, Miami-Dade County. We were so excited to see what we saw today and hear the great things that we heard. I think one of the really exciting pieces for me, who's, you know, longtime Miami person and Miami guy who's just been here forever, is to watch all the great leaders that we have, you know, Carvalho and Dr. Rosenberg and you know, the chancellor coming in and having these larger conversations, and Dr. Montoya, like, you know, it's really invigorating during these hard times to watch everybody kind of come together and watching us lead the way, because we're doing it together rather than trying to do it ourselves in a silo. The comments themselves and watching those go through have been really great. And just everybody really wanting to be a part of something better and something greater. So just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody. If anybody would like to get involved with the Chamber and obviously with the Education Committee, we welcome that. And once again, thank you so much to all of our panelists. It was honestly, it was great. It was refreshing, and it was extremely informational. So I know that we're recording this and we'll have this up again. And Alfred, thank you so much. And to you and your team, and to Rick and Bank of America and just everybody who put in so much work to get things like this done. I know that a lot of us just kind of log on and log off, and a lot of it goes unseen and unheard of, but great job by everybody. And thank you guys so much. Everybody, just outstanding job. Thank you.
Thank you, James, and thanks for all you do. Well, here we are at the end of another Thursday Roundtable. I want to thank our sponsors, Bank of America and CareerSource South Florida, and our distinguished panel. I think we had incredible and deep discussion. We have certainly been looking at challenging times, and if nothing else, though, I think what today's discussion has shown is how really resilient and supportive we are as a community and as Americans. And, you know, I just hope that you continue to be strong and know that we're all out there for you. Our universities and our institutions are out there for you. And certainly the Chamber is out there for you, continuing to do work on your behalf and on your business behalf. So please, if you need assistance, get a hold of us, contact us through our website. And I hope you will join us again for another Thursday Roundtable. Thank you and stay safe.